Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March Town Council meeting. We'll open the meeting with the roll call, and Megan Gardner, Judy Sullivan for the very last time, Tom Spitz, Sam Coons, and myself, Cindy Maynard, are present. Agenda review, I don't think we have anything to add to the agenda. So we'll move on to presentations. And Sophie, I'll let you call them up.
So we have two presentations tonight. For the first one, it would be nice for Rob Yerxa and Dave Thompson to stand at the podium. So earlier this year, Nancy sent out notices to members of committees who have served, asking if they were interested in renewing their membership. And we had one individual who is a long-term volunteer who has been incredibly dedicated that indicated that it was time for him to put up his permanent volunteer shoes and instead help us as an unofficial volunteer. So Jack Blees has been a dedicated volunteer on both the tree board and the Trails Committee for 15 years. Tree board from 2005 to 2018, and the Trails from 2003 to 2018. So Rob and Dave are standing because they very much want to recognize Jack, but evidently I'm the one that got tagged to speak. So, talking with both Rob and Dave prior to the council meeting, what I heard was that Jack is a volunteer who can be counted on, that his tractor and his expertise show up without fail, that whether it's a specific town project or working for the land trust, he has been a staunch supporter and steward of Orono's natural assets. And I'm not sure that we would be where we are today without all of his hard work. So we couldn't just let him disappear. We needed to take just a few minutes to thank Jack very much for his hard work. And we're not going to let you disappear, actually, because we will still call upon you. So thank you very much. We really appreciate all that you've done for the town.
If he's got a tractor, definitely.
I almost didn't have that tractor. I offered to let Louis Gavitt buy it out of Exeter. And my daughter, who now is I don't know whether she's really the owner or just the person who takes care of the tractor. So it's at her house if you're looking for it.
Thank you so much, Jack. And I'm moving on to the second presentation. Shall I start that one?
Yes.
Okay. We would like to recognize all of the service that Judy Sullivan has given to the town and to the town council. I'm going to get this wrong. 12 years, Judy? 9. Tom made it 6. I made it 12. And we've all kind of just been talking about what you have brought to the council. And for me, what you always brought was an understanding that the town is a large area, and you have to think about everyone in the community, not just one section over another. And so I really appreciate that and have really enjoyed working with you. We do have a gift for you, but I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything.
I do.
Okay.
I'm going to miss you terribly, and I have the world of respect for you. We joined up 3 years ago together. Well, you renewed for your second time, but it was my first round. And I know we disagreed on so many things, and it's been lovely. But there's always been such great civil discourse with everything. And I learned a lot, not only about being aware of the entire town, which I think we're all feel that we're dedicated to that, but you reminded us that it's important to really check ourselves on that. But also, I really respect the value of good civil discourse and really chewing on it sometimes, and that was so well demonstrated by you and Megan a few nights ago, actually. So thank you, Judy, very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It's not your turn yet.
Maybe I'll wait for acknowledgements. I'll wait for acknowledgements later. Thank you very much.
Well, I'll make mine short and sweet. Thank you for keeping us honest.
And I'd like to second all of that, especially what Sam was saying. I was later tonight when I'm giving a committee report, you'll hear a mention to a lively debate that ensued. And it was lively. And the thing that I really appreciate about working with you, Judy, is that we can have these very lively debates because we all sort of share a common goal of caring for this town. We just sometimes on this council, we view that in different ways, and we have different ideas about how to best do that. But it's very refreshing that we can have these lively conversations, and I think for the better of the town. And at the end of the day, everybody still feels good, everybody's still friends and chatting. It's really nice to be able to put kind of any kind of partisanship aside to really just focus on having a good old wrestle about the issues of how to make this the community that we really want to live in. So thank you.
Yes, you do.
I sometimes do. So, Judy, you are one of the shrinking few that was here when I was hired originally, and I have really appreciated the time that I've been able to spend with you. Always honest. I always knew exactly where you were. Never a question about that. I also just wanted you to know that the members of the senior staff team, the department heads that come and sit with council, have pretty universally expressed sorrow in seeing you leave. That while you had tough questions at times, I think staff always felt like you had their back, that you wanted to understand, and that what you were bringing was a different perspective, and it often helped us make a better decision. And we really appreciate it, and we'll miss you.
And you never want to be caught without you never want to be caught without a paddle, too.
Well, thank you. That is lovely. Very much. Find a spot on my wall.
So Judy, you want to keep your comments to acknowledgements? Is that what you said?
I think I will, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. I think we're going to have a brief update from the manager.
I'm going to pass it along to the chief unless there's something I need to add.
Good evening, Josh Ewing, Police Chief. I want to update you about a recent complaint about the noise maybe from the Orono House of Pizza. So we have made quite a few efforts to determine what the noise is. We've met with the owners from OHOP as well as our complainant, two of our complainants, brought those two groups together to really narrow down where the issue lies. And I think we're on the right track to, it sounds like there's already been some improvement, having those two groups get together. They've acknowledged that the noise is already diminished based on some work that the owners have done. They're mitigating the noise as best they can with some of the sound deadening materials that they place inside. They're working even harder to kind of see if the source is coming from the windows or the doors, so they're going to do some more work in those areas. It's already done a little bit of good, and they've got some more plans to like divert where the speakers are facing to have it go into the right area and away from where these two tenants live. So we have not heard, I think there was going to be a test this past week because they had the same type of music playing this past weekend, and we have not heard back from the complainant, so I'm thinking no news is good news. But I think the complainant was able to realize that the owners are very willing to work with them. They don't want to be bad neighbors. They're trying to find a way to solve the issue. Thanks for your
Thank
good.
you. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good. And thank you very much for both parties working together, and I know that the business really wants to be good neighbors, so I appreciate that a great deal. Move on to public hearings. Public hearing A, to consider a vitulers license for Grateful Pie, 6 Stillwater Avenue, has been held over and continued until the April 9th meeting so that they can get their final inspections done. Yep. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so I open public hearing A. I'm going to continue public hearing A till April 9th, 2018. So I will close. No? I'm not closing it.
Does anybody have their Robert's rules?
Judy, we're lost without you.
Don't ever take Nancy with you. Okay.
Nancy's never allowed to return.
Not till I do, that's for sure. Public hearing B, to consider an ordinance amendments to the Town of Orono Ordinances, Chapter 30, Solid Waste Management, Article 2, Flow Control, Division 1, generally, and Division 2, License to Repeal and Replace.
That's me.
Okay.
So the Town of Orono Solid Waste Management Ordinance currently has 4 distinct elements: flow control, rubbish disposal, disposal area, which governs the construction, demolition, debris, landfill, and recycling. What this proposed amendment only affects Article 2, which is the flow control and licensing portion. Under Title 38, Chapter 13, Section 1304, subsection 1, the state of Maine requires a municipality to provide for the disposal of residential and commercial solid waste that is generated within its borders. That, just to be clear, disposal means processing and management of the byproducts and residuals of solid waste versus collection and transportation. So we're only talking about having a place that the waste goes, not how it necessarily gets picked up or gets there. So dating back to the 1980s, the town, since the 1980s, the town has complied with the statute by contracting for disposal of the municipal solid waste generated within our borders with the Penobscot Energy Recovery Company, PERC. This contract with PERC will expire at the end of the month. Last year, the Orono Town Council elected not to renew the contract with PERC and instead has entered into a contract with, or an agreement with the Municipal Review Committee to dispose of our waste at the Fiberite facility that's currently under construction in Hamden. So the ordinance section that we're talking about today, flow control and licensing, is just that. It dates back to 1991. It directs all of the municipal solid waste generated within our borders to be disposed of at PERC, and it goes on to require those commercial haulers that are taking the waste to be licensed through the town. And the licensing portion is very important because it gives us a mechanism with waste being disposed of under our name that we're responsible for. If you had a hauler that was taking things that were not appropriate, there is a mechanism for us to not allow that hauler to work, continue to haul. So when I look at the current ordinance and I compare it to what we are suggesting, there are three significant differences. The first one is the ordinance seeks to address a Supreme Court ruling, Carbone versus Clarkstown, that dates back to 1994, where the Supreme Court decided that it was a violation of the Commerce Clause to regulate where that waste can't go to another state. So the Commerce Clause regulates trade between other nations, the United States and other nations, across state lines, and also with Native American tribes. So the rework of much of this ordinance is saying that we are directing you, if you're going to dispose of your waste in the state of Maine, it must go to Fiber Right. If you choose to take it outside the state of Maine, you need to provide us with proof that it is being disposed of outside the state of Maine. And we can't direct them where that goes outside the state. That was the first big difference. The second difference is it directs waste to the Fiber Right facility as opposed to the Penobscot Energy Recovery Company. And the third difference is that there is a much more robust and clearly defined structure for dealing with those licenses, the haulers that may have problems, and working through trying to solve those problems and their right of appeal. It's just more robust than it was under the other ordinance. The reason that we want to repeal and replace is because the ordinance in front of you has been carefully constructed by an attorney at the Municipal Review Committee for 180 towns, as opposed to us having to go pay for our own legal review. So this is, those are the major changes in the ordinance. I just want to make it very clear that on April 2nd, when we're now going to, we're going to keep going to PERC because the facility is still under construction, but nothing will change for residents. This piece of the ordinance that we're trying to revise is not going to change what it looks like on the face of the earth for a residential customer putting their trash out and their recycling out at curbside.
Great. Thank you, Sophie. Does anyone wish to speak for or against or have any questions regarding this amendment to the ordinance? Okay. Hearing none, I will close public hearing B. We're going to take this up again so council can discuss it at that point. All right, that's the end of the public hearings. We'll move on to acknowledgements by council members, and I'll start with Megan.
All right, I have a few items. Tom's not here, so I'll throw in a couple for him. So first, I just want to say happy birthday, Orono. To March 12th, 1806 is when the town was incorporated. So good on you, Orono, for keeping strong all these years. And this weekend, I want to say some congratulatory words to some of our RSU 26 students. We had this weekend RSU 26 students on school teams that won major competitions in hockey, drama, and chess. So quite a variety. Really great. Tomorrow is Election Day. We have 3 seats for council and 2 seats for RSU School Board. You can vote right here from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. If you're looking for info on the candidates, please head to the town's website at orono.org and click on the big red, white, and blue check mark that says vote. And after you vote tomorrow, please make sure that you go out into the lobby here outside of Council Chamber and check out the Orono Historical Society's exhibit, which is School Days. It's pretty cool. The OHS, as you know, has generously partnered with the town to purchase display cases, and they have a number of other exhibits planned for the coming months. And then finally, I'd like to mention that we're about to head into budget season. So starting towards the end of April and running through the month of May, we're going to be injecting around 7-ish budget workshops into our regular schedule. Those will be happening on Mondays and Thursdays usually. That information will be online. So we usually take it department by department. For each of these workshop meetings. And if there's a town department that you're particularly interested in, you should make sure to attend. If you can't attend, you can always find minutes and audio on our website at orono.org. And agendas are published ahead of time, so you can plan accordingly. I would love to see more people at the budget workshops. Just speaking as someone who lived in this town for a very long time before becoming a council member, I knew next to nothing about how this town was run, and I think that it's a really great experience for any citizen to just sit in on these budget workshops. They're very enlightening. All right. Know where your tax dollars go. It's important, right?
Thank you, Megan. Judy.
First of all, I would like to just take a moment just to talk about my time with the council. Like a lot of people, I got involved because I was concerned about what was happening, and I wanted to have a voice. And the one thing which has always, Megan kind of referred to the fact that we don't see a lot of people at our meetings, and the budget meetings in particular, and I can imagine why. It's pretty dry, but I do believe that we, as citizens, we kind of get the government and the process that we deserve. We really need to think about being involved. And if you don't want to be sitting on this side of the counter, then, please try to make an effort to be on the other side of the counter and be talking to us about what's going on and what is important to you. And I think that's probably been the piece of the pie that I've kind of missed the most in my time here, because we haven't had as much of that public involvement as I would have liked. When it comes to my involvement with the town, first of all, it's been such a delight for me, as Megan alluded to, without being involved and really not understanding the complexity of what happens in this town, to be able to appreciate the quality of the people who work for the town, their commitment to trying to service us as at whatever level that we seem to demand at different times. But I have just been so impressed with the professionalism of the people that I've had to meet, with the way that they approach management. I can see why most of these people have happy campers working for them, because of the way that they approach things. And it's just really been very rewarding and positive experience in that regard, and I'm glad I've got to know people. Again, when it comes to my fellow councilors, I would like to say the same thing. I know that when I first came on board, there was some concern, believe it or not, that I might be a little contentious. And I do think that one of the best things about getting involved with people that you don't know very well and over something that everybody cares about, because there's never been any question in my mind how much people on the council care about the town, and the people, the management and the staff of the town too. So when you have something in common like that, you kind of get to know one another. And so it's been very good for me, because I developed an appreciation for the different individuals that were involved, met people that I would, socially would not had contact with. People don't come out to visit us in Hogtown very often. So it was really, it was a treat for me. It was very entertaining, and I, never lose track of and faith in in the process, that when people do have conversations with one another and they do try to work towards a common goal, how much understanding and appreciation they can develop for one another. And I still would leave you with parting words in terms of the fact that Orono is geographically a fairly large town. There is a lot of diversity in this town, some of which is socioeconomic diversity. And I really, really, at times when you're making your decisions and you're talking about things, and I won't be there to put in a kind of a different point of view or a different perspective, to try to keep that in mind. And I would also ask you to, one of the things I think that we were talking to somebody the other day about how sad it is that people in town don't take trips to the dump anymore. That the town picks everything up, because a lot of people never leave the confines of their neighborhood and their very general area in town, and don't begin to appreciate, again, that diversity. So, take a trip once in a while. It's a nice ride out back, as we refer to it, and get a sense of maybe the differences. We don't have sidewalks, and how concerned people here about sidewalks being cleaned. And we got 3 machines that we're taking for all of that. And I take my life in my hands when I step off the tarmac. So those little things keep in mind, because it is a different world, and we do have different. I think different attitudes and different approaches to things. You don't hear so much from the people out back. I don't think even the people in the different departments hear too many complaints or whatever. I think we seem to be pretty quiet and accepting of this is the way that it is. And we always had in our mind, there was a benefit to that. It was kind of like, out of sight, out of mind, you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. And I'm not sure how much that's still working. And every once in a while, we get into conversations. I brought this in, by the way, because I owe it to the town. It comes back. And this is our book of ordinances. And every once in a while, when we're doing all these new rules and regulations, and by the way, this is not up to date. This ended in 2012. We haven't added to it because everything now is electronic. So this would be even bigger in terms of rules and regulations that the town of Orono functions under. And to me, it seems like a lot, and we just keep adding. And for me, that was sometimes part of my argument, was the restrictive rules. So keep me in mind. You probably will see me. I've made promises to my partner that I won't be here every Monday night. So don't worry about that. And I wish you all well. This is not an easy task. This is not a position where you're going to walk home at night and knowing that you've made everybody happy, because that isn't how it works. So we do the best we can. I do think that the majority of us do function in a form of not our personal agenda and not what we want for ourselves, but what is the best thing for the town and for the citizens of the town. And it's challenging. And the budget this year, I think, is going to be, it's always a challenge, but every year it gets worse. I think more demanding and maybe more decisions that might have to be made. So again, thank you all. It's been a pleasure, and I will miss you. But I'll be sitting home with my feet up on Monday night watching, what is it, The Voice? Or Antique Roadshow.
You can still stream us, Judy.
Thank you very much again. And the best of luck to all of you.
Thank you, Judy. Tom, you top that?
Wow. Well, on the eve of the third nor'easter, I believe they said 10 days, our Public Works group has done a wonderful job, and I'm sure we'll see them many times in the next day or so. And thank you. And one thing that Judy said, we have a tremendous staff here, and they do a great job, and they're very conscientious. You'll see some of the things that we're looking at approving. They've pinched every penny, they've looked for every grant, and they do a great job. And they're very adaptive, clever, whatever you want to call it. Thank you. Great job, guys. So, after telling you there's a nor'easter coming, I suggest you vote early tomorrow.
Please vote.
Because I'm told by, what do they call it, the evening commute, it may be somewhat impassable in terms of seeing things. So are you going to be here the whole day? And yeah, okay. Good thing you live close.
Yeah. Not me. I try to stay away from municipal elections because it's my boss
Right.
that's being elected. But staff has to stay until 8 o'clock because that's the published election time. So we will be here. We've made arrangements. If we have to put folks up because they can't get home, we can do that.
Okay. Yeah, some of the worst weather comes in March here.
Divine intervention.
Yeah. I don't quite have to take that one, but anyway. So I've known Jack since '94, and one thing Jack has been great about is giving me information and some long stories. Thank you, Jack. And, you know, I don't know what to say about Judy. She's, other than she's kept us honest, she's brought a different perspective many times. And she really, you know, over time, I don't want to say she's mellowed. I think we've all adapted. But
Both ways.
but you know, it's always been good. She causes you to think, and that's been great. And I know every time we get new people in, it's also good because I think at first they don't know what's going on, and then as we get farther on, they go, well, we should do something about this, and you kind of go, we have no power. But Judy got through that very quickly, and she knew what her limitations were. She's been a very hard worker. She always does her homework, and bless her heart, many times she's still working, and many times, well, I guess there's several of us here still working. I'd like to retire someday too, but. You know, she had to make arrangements at her job and everything else to do this job, and I know it's been some sacrifice to you beyond what other people are having to do. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Tom. Sam, do you have anything?
Yeah, just a few things, sort of echoing pretty much everybody. A little more detail on some of the great things that happened this past weekend. Old Town Orono hockey team won their state championship, which is fantastic. Plus, it was the first time ever a consolidated team did that, which is great, and a lot of great kids from our town obviously were part of that. The Orono High School won the regional gold, which is first place, but it's nicer to have gold, I guess. So, but also, they'll be off to state competitions, I think, in 2 weeks. And also, 3 of the cast were singled out with very prestigious awards for this. Noam and Zevi Osher, yes, related to the absent Laurie Osher, and Elsa Jolliffe, who was the lead in the play, were fantastic, and they all had special recognition for that. And I actually got to see it last Wednesday. They had it up at the high school, sort of a preview, and it was fantastic. It was hysterical. Also, hats off to the UMaine women's basketball team, who are off to the dance, which is really exciting, to the NCAA championship. Otherwise, vote early tomorrow. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but it's just hoping for large turnouts there. And I always figured that if Judy could do 9 years, I could at least go for 6. So that's my goal.
That was my goal, Sam. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I'm not very good at math either, so it might be 9, so I don't know.
Well, thank you, everyone, for all of your acknowledgments, contributions. I will say that the Orono Historical Society case looks beautiful, and I do appreciate the Orono High School. Is it all of schools or just the high school?
Middle school and high school.
Middle school and high school have an exhibit, which is very nice on the other side. All right, moving on to unfinished business. I don't believe we have any, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. I will take a motion to move the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
All right, all those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to new business. Order 1829, order approving a 6-month moratorium ordinance extension on future development of Park Street in the C2 district and a portion of the University district. I'll take a motion, please.
Move approval.
Second?
All right, and Jenna, you're up, I guess, or Sophie, or I don't know.
So I was just going to say that the council has decided to place a moratorium on certain development within the Park Street corridor to allow us to deal with some concerns that we have in terms of the build-out plan, and so land use ordinance and ordinance requirements, as well as traffic control. I don't know if anybody has seen, but we have a bit of a traffic flow issue along that corridor. So when the council adopts a moratorium, the moratorium can only last a maximum of 6 months at a time. And in order to be renewed for another 6 months, council must find that there still is a reason, the reason still exists, and that substantial effort is being made. So you're not allowed to just put a moratorium on and then just walk away. So Jana Richards, the town planner, is here tonight to walk you through the effort that is being made and the reason why we think the situation still exists that warrants the moratorium. So I will pass it along to her.
Thanks, Sophie. My name is Jana Richards. I am the town planner. So there's two primary purposes of the moratorium. The first is to allow municipal officials, staff, and council to review the land use ordinance and to develop and adopt new or amendments to the ordinances that are particularly focused on protecting the health, safety, and welfare of residents, those traveling to and from the University of Maine, as well as businesses that exist on Park Street. So this would include a review of those provisions of the land use ordinance that particularly pertain to traffic management and access management and safety. And the second purpose is to determine the types of transportation improvements that would best relieve existing and future anticipated traffic congestion and safety problems within the corridor. So I put together an update beginning in October of 2017. Town staff began the process of developing the Park Street Transportation Study with the help of consulting transportation engineers and planners. The results of the study will help address the purpose of the moratorium by providing recommendations to amend the land use ordinance and recommended transportation system improvements. So we have made progress on this study since the moratorium was extended in September of 2017. In October of 2017, we put out an RFP for consultants to help us with the Park Street Transportation Study. In November, we selected the consultant and we assembled an advisory committee, and that committee has representatives from residents of the Park Street corridor, businesses in the Park Street corridor, the University of Maine, the Maine Department of Transportation, and the Bangor Area Comprehensive Transportation System, as well as staff from Orono and also from Old Town as well. We held a kickoff meeting that focused on the scope of the study at the end of November. In December 2017, we had an advisory committee that went through existing conditions in the corridor. That would include existing traffic, turning numbers that go both toward the university and toward the Old Town line from large intersections where the student developments are currently located, crash locations, high crash locations, existing crosswalk infrastructure, bike ped infrastructure, etc. We also held a public meeting in January of 2018, again, showing some of the current existing conditions, both from a land use and a transportation perspective that exist within the corridor, but then reaching out to the public and asking them for their input on what they feel are issues within the corridor themselves. We held the same type of a public meeting at the University of Maine, so we could reach out to students and faculty and staff and get their input as well. A lot of the feedback from that meeting was great in terms of transit and walkability and bike ped issues as well. And then At the end of January, we held an advisory committee meeting where we went through some of the feedback from the public comment and also talked about future trends. So build-out analysis was conducted earlier in 2017 by the planning staff to go through what the biggest use of some of the areas within the C2 district could be in Park Street and how that would impact the corridor into the future, spanning out almost 20 years. And just recently in February of 2018, we held an advisory committee meeting where we went through the draft transportation improvement plan. And so what we have left, there's still some steps in the studies process that need to be completed. So I said that there was the draft transportation improvement plan. So we need to get a finalized draft improvement plan, and council will get a copy of that and have the ability to provide input on that. We'll also hold a public meeting number 2, where we'll go through the finalized draft transportation plan so that the members of the public can provide feedback. We'll hold another advisory committee meeting so that we can discuss the public feedback and council's feedback on the draft plan. And then we should have a final transportation improvement plan in place. And that final plan will include transportation system improvements. So this includes recommendations to the roadway infrastructure to relieve existing and future traffic congestion and safety problems. Improvements to the streetscape, bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure and transit systems. Again, these recommendations will be to more safely accommodate all modes of transportation, so to try and alleviate some of the congestion within the corridor by allowing other modes of transit other than vehicles. Access management improvements, so to combine or limit the amount of curb cuts on Park Street and therefore to alleviate some of the congestion that is coming forward from making some of the left-hand turns out of the large student complexes. And finally, land use ordinance amendment recommendations to amend the land use ordinance provisions pertaining to traffic and access management and design standards in order to ensure that new development does not contribute to traffic congestion and safety problems into the future. So once we have a final plan, the staff and council will need time to work out the implementation process from the plan. And because of the steps that we have left within the study, and because we need time to work out the implementation process and to consider all the recommendations, we're recommending an extension of the moratorium.
Staff is unsure whether or not we'll actually need the full 6 months. And the plan would be, once council has the material it needs to begin its deliberation. Some of it, I think, will be very clear-cut, that kind of low-hanging fruit. When we are comfortable with what is in place, the thought would be to repeal the moratorium if we're not at 6 months, which is the hope.
So does the implementation start before the moratorium ends?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Council would want any issues around ordinance changes, things that you would want the planning board to consider as part of site plan review, access management, items that would be projected for major infrastructure improvement, because we do have the mechanism for impact fees. So if we were going to put in some kind of traffic calming measure and we had a large development come in that would add to the traffic, we would, if you have codified that that's the plan, we can then estimate the cost and their proportional share of that cost as part of their planning board review.
And the only other question I had, Jana, was the Rotary
Yes.
that was already is that part of the study?
Yes, yes, it's looked at as it already exists. They took that into consideration as if it already exists.
Great, thanks. Does any other counselors have questions of Jana?
Not so much a question, but a brief comment. I've definitely heard from folks who have feelings about the moratorium and what it means, either because they are concerned that they don't want additional development in that area, or because they want, they're straining against the regulations and want development in that area. So I hope that folks out there who are kind of watching this or reading the minutes later understand that this is all, our town staff is just doing a really, really careful job assessing all of the factors that are in play so that we can make the best possible choices for what happens next in Park Street.
Anyone else? Thank you very much, Jana.
Thanks.
All right, I will take a vote on Order 1829. All those in favor of extending a 6-month moratorium? All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Order 1830, order authorizing the town manager to enter into a contract with Copia Specialty Contractors of Brewer for preparation and painting of the WPCF clarifiers number 1 and number 2 for an amount not to exceed $70,000 to be drawn from the WPCF Capital Reserve Funds. I'll take a motion, please.
So moved.
Second?
All right. Will you lead up, or will Joe start it right off?
Joe has got this one.
All right.
Joe Madigan, Superintendent of the WPCF. Some of you have been to the plant and seen these clarifiers. They're built with a whole lot of steel under the water. So what our intent is to preserve those structures. They're starting to get a little rust on them, so we need to nip it in the bud before they get worse. So we reached out to 3 contractors, and we were fortunate enough that Copia, who was the lowest bid, was also the ones that painted them in the first place 10 years ago. So their work was held up for 10 years, so they did a good job then. So we could look for another good job this year. The other 2 companies, one was in state, the other one was out of state. There are very few companies that do this work because of the hazards of the sandblast and the paint too. And this is all done in a confined space because the clarifiers are covered over. So we're just trying to preserve what we got.
And I believe at the Finance Committee that you told us this was a great deal because you had originally budgeted for $140,000 for both of them, right?
Right.
So we're getting 2 done for
70.
70.
Don't let Copia hear that.
This is all public, Sam.
And I think you also told us that we would probably be doing this in the summer when it's a little drier.
Well, yeah, when the flows drop down.
And we'll do one side and then the other.
Yeah, go right on to one clarifier and then do the other one, yeah.
Yeah.
That's our dry season, hopefully.
You think the snow's going to stop, huh? Did anyone have any questions of Joe? Or did you have anything to add, Sophie? No? Nope.
How long a process is this?
It's 4 weeks, each one. Or that's what they've allowed for it.
I'm just curious, can you put all the bugs in one side? They don't,
Yes.
you never get too many bugs?
We normally would in the summertime
Yeah.
anyway, so that's just our normal operation, so this is perfect to do in the summertime.
Okay, great, thank you. If none of council has any more questions or comments, I'll take a vote on Order 1830. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Joe. Order 1831, Deep breath. Order authorizing the town manager to purchase 6 Armor Express Traverse external carry vests and related accessories for the police department at a cost not to exceed $5,010 with funds drawn from the police state forfeiture fund of $3,000 and town safety reserve of $2,010, authorizing the town manager to apply to the Maine Municipal Association Risk Management's Ed McDonald Safety Enhancement Grant Program for $2,000 towards the cost of purchasing an additional 5 vests and accessories, and further to accept and authorize the expense of said funds, if awarded, for the purchase of 5 additional vests and accessories with matching funds coming from the departmental operating budgets that will be approved for FY 2019. I'll take a motion with somebody repeating that. No?
I move approval.
Second.
Right. And we have no model, so.
What size
Show and tell will be in a minute.
Okay. Go right ahead.
Josh Ewing, again, Police Chief. This, you can put it on if you'd like. This project is really about officer safety and wellness. Believe it or not, I would think that without it fail, every police officer that wears the uniform experiences at some point low back pain because of all the weight being around the waist on the belt. It's probably 20 plus pounds. So there's been a trend nationally to try and mitigate that weight and bring it up onto the chest of the officers. Bring that weight up onto the chest of the officers so that's where their core is, and the weight would be on their shoulders, and get it off the hips. Even when in a sitting position, which officers do for many hours at a time, it's forcing the body to be out of alignment and putting pressure against different parts of the body can cut off circulation to the legs and just cause long-term issues after doing this for many years. So Sergeant Barrio did the research on this project to try and see if we could improve the kind of the comfort and wellness of the officers. So he's been demoing this particular vest, and almost all the gear other than his firearm and his radio has been brought up onto the chest of the vest. So his body armor, which I'm wearing underneath this shirt, is actually inside this vest, and he's got a tourniquet, his pepper spray, his handcuffs, the magazines for the weapon, the taser, all up on, and the body camera as well, all up off of his belt, putting that weight where it really belongs. He did enough research to even went and talked to a local chiropractor who at least initially approves the idea. She thinks that getting that weight off the waist is absolutely going to long-term help the lower back. We'll have to wait and see whether or not that has been distributed to maybe the neck and shoulders and maybe issues in the long term. We'll wait and see. But nationally, the trend has been to move that weight up onto the chest, and there's been success. And Sergeant Barrio would already report feeling better. One of the great things about the vest is that when you're inside the PD, which they're in there writing reports, meal times, that type of thing, it very quickly just unzips, and they take all that weight off, and they can set it on the chair next to them, which now there's no weight on their body other than the gun belt. So it's an immediate comfort thing for the officer. It takes seconds to put it back on it. Even in the event of an emergency, they just throw it back on, zip it up, and they're back on the road. So we really see this as a win-win. This particular vest will actually be a dark blue like my uniform, so it'll match closer to the uniform top. The project itself is kind of split up into 2 phases. There's a grant, we have some money in our drug seizure forfeiture fund, and the town has been gracious enough to provide some of the funds from the safety reserve to make an initial purchase to get 6 officers outfitted. And then once the grant period starts for the Ed McDonald, the Maine Municipal Ed McDonald Safety Grant, once that period starts, we'll apply for that as well. There's a matching fund there, and if approved, we'll be able to buy 5 more. So there are 11 officers right now that would like to try this new vest. We're not going to make it mandatory. We want people to want to do it and perhaps see the benefit of it, and then maybe the others will kind of climb on board as well and want to try the same thing. So 2 phases. We'd like to buy the 6 up front and then hopefully get the grant and buy the other 5. How does it feel?
Great. Haven't worn this before. Comfortable.
And I can attest, I've been wearing this gun belt for 17 years. I can attest to the low back issues, the kind of the pain in the legs and the numbness in the legs sometimes. It's just uncomfortable. Granted, police officers knew that they weren't going to be getting this job for health reasons, but anything that we can do to kind of mitigate future health issues and costs to the town and just the wellness of the officer, we want to do.
I was going to say, while I like to be kind to our employees, this is also potential savings for the town in workers' comp claims, because their lower back strain is something that we would own later in life, and also lost days, which gets very, very expensive having to backfill.
Josh, do you want to just mention the accessories? I think you were talking about a shirt.
Yes, part of, to really fill out the project properly, there's a different shirt that should be worn underneath the vest. Obviously, I could wear this one, but it just has zippers and buttons and pockets that are unnecessary. So there are shirts that are specifically designed for this, which would show the sleeve and the collar as if it's a regular dress uniform shirt, but then the inside would just be like Under Armour material almost. So it's more comfortable and breathable, just to provide more comfort underneath the vest. So that's an additional cost for the grant. And then each of these pouches, obviously, we would outfit each vest with pouches that match the gear.
Anyone else have any questions or comments?
When I was reading through the material, it sounded like there were some people that were not interested in these vests.
Correct.
And they will have the option?
Absolutely. I fought this initially. I like this. I like the appearance of the dress type uniform. It's tradition. But they wore me down. I was worried, particularly worried about the tactical look of this. I don't want the public to perceive a SWAT look to their officers. We're finding that the public has hardly noticed. Sergeant Barrier has been wearing this for a couple months and has not received any negative comments. Megan was astute enough to suggest that we do a fairly good public information campaign to let them know what it is we're doing and why we're doing it. So yes, the other officers will probably get on board when they start listening to their fellow officers saying how much better they feel, and when the officer walks in and unzips his vest and throws it on a chair next to him. I think everybody will get on board, but we want it to be kind of a voluntary thing to begin with.
I spoke in favor of this at the committee meeting, but the cost saving, the health and wellness factor, all of these things are wonderful. And one thing that was that you mentioned, Chief, during the meeting that I don't think you mentioned tonight was paramedics can access your torso easier with this vest, which is time saving and life saving.
Yeah,
so.
Thank you for saying that. I did note it here, and I realized I'd missed saying it, and I thought I'd let it go. God forbid there's an injury to an officer. This will take a while to get to my chest, to cut through my shirt, get my vest out of the way to get to an injury. This will just unzip, and they'll have just the fabric of the shirt to get out of the way at that point. They'll be able to find an injury faster and be able to treat it faster. So it's just really all around. And the cost, I think, long-term for the purchasing of the vest and the additional shirts will not be a significant difference between what we pay right now for uniforms. So.
Did you?
It just seems like absolute kind of standard, not necessarily state of the art, but like this is where we are.
I think we're moving toward this type of
Absolutely,
uniform.
absolutely, and I don't want to skimp on anything like this, of course. Also, we always go through great lengths of making sure we have, like a work environment that is not going to cause injury and that sort of thing. It's the same thing here. This is your work environment. You have to do this. So I think it's great. Thank you for doing the research. And Avi, you were doing a fantastic job, by the way.
Getting heavy yet?
They didn't tell me I would have to model.
What did you know?
Josh, and the safety grant, or the grant that you're applying for, that's in June, May?
Yeah, it opens in May. We should hear by June or July. So it's a match. If we spend $3,000, there's a $2,000 grant back to the town.
Great. Anybody else have any other questions or comments? Susan, do you have?
I was simply going to mention, if I'm remembering correctly, there's a company, I think they're located in the Southwest, and they produce Kevlar garments. And they have their own clothing line. They might be the originator of the Kevlar backpacks for students. Though if I'm remembering correctly, I think they might do custom work as well. They test all of their stuff on their employees. Like, they make their employees wear the Kevlar shirts and shoot their employees.
We do the same thing with our officers.
That's what they do with their employees, actually. But they might want to consult them. Simply, they might be capable of lightening the load. They might be capable of taking that design, and I don't know if it would pass for I think it would. I don't want to be held responsible for the statement that it would prevent a bullet from passing through, but their standards might be the equivalent of the body armor involved in that, yet their clothing might lighten the load some. So might be worth consulting.
Yeah, I can answer. There's the vest that we buy now, the body armor that we buy now, is approved by the National Institute of Justice beforehand. So I'm assuming eventually, as new technology comes along, there will be better and lighter, and I can't wait to see it. I'm kind of excited about what they might be able to produce. But right now, we have to follow the government's guidelines. Something I didn't mention is the vest that I wear now, we get measured, the panels of that get measured, and this vest is then designed to fit that vest. So I can keep the body armor that I'm wearing, slide it into that vest, and it becomes one piece at that point.
So we're not buying all new armor for everyone?
Correct.
Great. All right. If no one else has any questions or comments, I'll take a vote on Order 1831. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And thank you, Avi, wherever you are. Moving on to Order 1832, order adopting ordinance amendments to the Town of Orono Ordinances, Chapter 30, Solid Waste Management, Article 2, Flow Control, Division 1, Generally, and Division 2, License to Repeal and Replace. I'll take a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
I don't know if you, Sophie gave us a very detailed and good explanation of this at the public hearing. Does anyone have any additional questions or comments for Sophie? No, it's all part of the process that we have been working through for the past year, I would say. All right, hearing none, I will take a vote on Order 1832. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Order 1833, order authorizing the purchase of Public Works welder from Airgas of Bangor for $7,501.87 to be drawn from the wood chipper reserve account, approximately $7,026, with the balance from the Public Works Department approved FY 2018 operating budget. Take a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Mr. Yerkes.
Good evening. Rob Yerkes, Orono Public Works. So Public Works has two welding machines right now that work independently, sometimes together, to perform all of our metal repairs and fabrication that we do in-house to keep all the equipment that we have going and in good repair. Both those machines were purchased by the town, one in '81 and one in '84. So as you can imagine, some of their operation has become a little antiquated, but also as we try to repair some of the things that break on the machines, we're having trouble even finding parts to repair them, as they are both now over 30 years old. We do a lot of in-house repairs, anything from, of course, the bigger equipment, fixing plows, replacing the metal in the buckets on front-end loaders, that kind of stuff. We also do smaller things or fabricate things to help our operation get more efficient. So we are proposing to replace the two. Like I said, one of the MIG welder, we actually need a part that we simply can't find. And we've recently had a few safety issues with the arc welder. This purchase would replace both of those, the MIG and the arc welder, which, same situation, they work together or independently depending on what the application is. We're proposing to fund it with, this is an unexpected expense. We had originally planned on replacing the welders when we transitioned from the Penobscot Street facility to the Kelly Road facility. However, some other needs arose as we began to fit the building out, and since at the time both of those welders were still working, I decided to see how much we could get out of them before we finally, and I actually had hoped we'd get through this budget season. Unfortunately, that's not going to be the case. We're proposing to fund this purchase with funds that were left over from the wood chipper fund. So 30 years ago, we entered into a cooperative agreement with a number of communities in this region and the University of Maine to purchase a single wood chipper that we shared. And then each year, each of the communities would put in a little bit to cover costs of operation repairs. At the end of that agreement, over the years, other communities, including ours, decided to purchase their own wood chipper. And so at the end of the agreement period, the funds were distributed back to the communities depending on how much they had committed to that fund. And the $7,000 that we're proposing to use to cover this purchase was what was left over as Orono's portion of that fund. The total cost for the two machines is around $7,500. So we'll cover the remaining 500 or so out of operating costs.
Does anyone have any questions or comments?
I do, briefly.
Okay.
So one thing that's really struck me in my time on council is how frequently I hear about Public Works having machinery from the 1980s, which is a testament to our staff that they have the skill set to really keep things in such good working order for such a long time. I also recall from the committee meeting where we initially discussed this, that safety is a big concern with these particular pieces of equipment that need to be replaced. They are unsafe for our staff, and that's not something that's okay. And also that I think, Rob, you told us the new welder equipment will allow us to make use of staff skill sets that, you know, we have employees with skills that they can't use with the current welders, so this will actually allow us to increase our productivity, right?
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. The new equipment will allow us to expand the applications. So some of the things, particularly welding on aluminum, we don't currently have the equipment that we need. We certainly have the expertise and the talent to do that, but we don't have the equipment to do it, and this equipment will allow us to add that to our, to essentially all our metal fabrication and repairs can be done in-house now.
And Rob, what kind of I mean, 30 years is a very long life. Is that something you expect again, or is that something of the days gone by that nothing lasts forever?
Well, that's right, Judy, nothing lasts forever, right? I think asking to get 30 years out of any kind of piece of equipment, I think we use them a little bit more than they probably did when they originally were bought. We've got a few more people in the shop that have those talents, but I would expect to get 20 years out of them. They're millers, so they're a quality piece of equipment. We didn't pick a cheap setup, I guess would be the way I would say it.
Yep.
The only thing I would add is that by buying them through Airgas, we're actually buying the state bid, so this is a vetted price.
Yeah, I was going to mention that too, and that I was graduating from high school when they were purchased, so that was a very long time ago. Anyone else have questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll take a Susan, go ahead.
So my welding background, I'm wondering, what exactly are the machines? You mentioned the aluminum applications. Are you getting TIG welders, or are they MIG welders? Or What exactly are you shopping for?
It's a MIG and an ARC, and then we have a free high-frequency adapter so that we'll be able to TIG.
So it's a MIG with an adapter to
Well, off the arc welder. You TIG with the arc welder on high frequency. The MIG operates on its own with a wire feeder.
I'd rather you just got a TIG welder if you want to weld aluminum.
Thank you, Susan. All right, moving on. Oh, so we're going to take a vote on Order 1833. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Rob. Moving on to 1834, order authorizing the town manager to enter into a contract with Tanco of San Francisco, California as a sole source vendor to create a comprehensive streetlight inventory and proposal for acquisition and upgrade of streetlights at a cost of $25 per pole for an estimated 228 poles to be drawn from the miscellaneous electrical account in the approved FY18 capital infrastructure budget. We'll take a motion, please.
So moved.
Second?
All right. Rob, that's you again.
Thank you. So the town has two major lighting infrastructure categories, I guess I would say. One of which are ones that are owned and operated by the town. We pay the electrical bill. They're usually on a metered system, and we handle all the maintenance. The other category are the ones that you see mounted on telephone poles, the more classic street light that you think of, that are owned and operated by Emera, Maine, and then the town pays a monthly fee per unit to have those street lights in our town. This is a fixed rate because these lights are not on a metered system as determined by the PUC. So recent legislature has allowed towns to purchase these lights from Emera or from the whatever power company is in the region, in the area that the municipality is in. So what the process would do is you would purchase the fixtures and then operate them at a reduced rate, but you take on the responsibility of owning the fixtures and maintaining them. They're still on a unmetered system, but we pay a fixed rate at a lower rate because you're assuming more responsibility for the maintenance. This opportunity allows the municipality for Orono to take a closer look at the way those lights are distributed throughout town, but also upgrade the fixtures to more efficient LED fixtures and pay a lower rate for the operation, basically pay less for the electricity feeding those fixtures. There's a process that we need to follow to make this happen. And before we enter into that process, it's important that we do some research on where our light fixtures are, and then how we want to replace them. And some of that stuff we're going to need some help from a consultant. The reason why we would want to go through this process is because in the end, we'll see some significant savings in the cost of our street lights over the entire town, to the point where for Orono, with the 228 lights, we can save almost $20,000 a year by taking the lights on, the maintenance and ownership of them, converting them to an LED light, which has a lower rate per unit, and then moving forward, taking on all full responsibility for future replacements and all of those things associated with any kind of electrical infrastructure. So what we're proposing today is to take a company that has been working with the city of Brewer for their streetlight conversion process and begin that audit process of taking on this entire infrastructure change. The scope of the proposal that we're looking at tonight would start out with a comprehensive audit of all of the streetlights that we currently have. So they would go through the entire town and create a GIS map of the specific location and type of every single streetlight that we physically have in the town of Orono. They would then take that information and compare it to what we're paying for to make sure that what we're being billed for is truly accurate to what we actually have on the street. When you have this many streetlights, there's likely that there's some discrepancy on whether we're being billed for a streetlight on Page Place versus one on Noyes Drive. And 228 is an estimated number of poles that have lights on them. We may find 235, we may find 210. Either way, we'll take care of all of those discrepancies to make sure that we as the municipality and Emera as the power company agree on this is how many poles we have and this is exactly where we are. The next step would be to begin the negotiation process on a value of how much it would cost to acquire the streetlights as they are. So we would, the consultant would work with the town to negotiate a cost per unit to purchase the infrastructure that's existing from Emera. They would then work with us on how to, on what types of streetlights, what types of fixtures specifically we'd like to place in place of the ones that are there, or perhaps we may want to redistribute some depending on how we may have clusters of Park Street comes to mind. We may have some poles where we have 3 or 4 in a row, then we skip 3 or 4, and we can redistribute those to provide a better lighting service to the residents. And at the end, they will provide us with a replacement plan. So based on the results of the audit, all the negotiations with Emera, what we decide our acquisition costs are going to be, and then what we're proposing to replace those with, they'll come up with an overall estimate, a very specific estimate on how much it would cost to actually go through the process, to complete, acquire them, hire a contractor, an electrical contractor, to go up and actually physically replace the poles, replace the fixtures on the poles, and then negotiate that whole process with Emera through the end. This proposal that we're talking about tonight brings us to that replacement plan, providing it to the town. That'll be another milestone that we will come back to you for to decide how we want to proceed. The cost of the plan is $5,700, so it's $25 per pole. If you decide to move forward with Tanco and execute the transition plan, that cost gets rolled into the project. At that time, we could decide that we're happy with, thanks, we got a really great deliverable on, now we know where all our fixtures are, and we've negotiated we know that what we're paying for is what we really have, which is the valuable thing. But we're gonna wait, or we're going to pursue this in a different way. And then at that point, we would owe Tanco for the cost of the audit for the $5,700.
Questions? So according to this, we're ballparking the total expense around $125,000. Is that the one-time capital expenses in here?
Yeah, so if you decide to move forward, the ballpark estimate for the total cost of acquiring the fixtures and replacing them with LED fixtures is around $125,000.
But then we're also estimating about $20,000 savings a year.
Right, so
Virtually pays for itself in 6 years or so.
5 or 6 years, you would realize the cost.
The new fixtures we have in the different parking lots, it's not including those, this is just street lights?
that we're talking?
Yes, this is just,
But Godfrey Drive, we just replaced those, we own those.
those are town-owned, they're on a metered system. That's a good example of a light that would not be included in this. Ones that would be included would be, for example, all the street lamps that you see on Park Street, that are they'd be attached to a telephone pole. No, the bridge is separate. We do have the option, if we decide to move forward with the project, we do have the option to have the electrical contractor at the same time that they're in doing all the telephone pole repairs. We can add fixtures at an additional cost, but I would think those ones come to mind as ones that we might want to do at that point, and take advantage of probably some savings for the scale of the project.
So the only other thing that I would bring up that Rob and I have talked about is the current lighting fixtures. Many of them are the high-pressure sodium light fixtures that do not give very good light. Over time, we have gotten much better with directing light and providing light down. And if you look at Godfrey, would be a very good example, or even the parking lot out here where we replaced with smaller fixtures and no more. We didn't add fixtures to the back parking lot.
Right.
However, we certainly improved the lighting and the safety. And you literally walk in and out of the light, which I think when you think about going down Main Street, we get a lot of complaints about how dark it is. So we're looking at this not only as a cost-saving, energy-saving project, but the potential of addressing some real pedestrian safety concerns in the community.
Yeah, and we will have, as we develop the replacement plan, we'll be able to focus on crosswalk areas, things like that, issues that I know we need to address. This is just a great opportunity to take care of all of those things.
And to add to, sorry, Judy, just to add to that lovely laundry list that Sophie just provided of the potential benefits if we, realize some savings too, and that will be great, is also one thing I remember that came up during the meeting is this idea of local control as being very important. That there are times when a streetlight might go out that we do not own, and who knows when it could get fixed, right? And that's something that residents notice and they have feelings about, and I don't blame them, because there are some areas of town where it doesn't feel particularly safe to walk at night, and so this is a way for us to have more local control as well. Yeah.
So right now we, if I'm made aware, if I notice, or a lot of times the police department will report lights that are down, I can report them to Emera, and then we are sort of at the mercy of their work order system. So depending on how busy they are, you're in the midst of a weather situation, those types of repairs kind of fall down the list. And it can be quite a while sometimes before they get in. I would say I've noticed in recent months that they've done a little bit better with that. But if we do acquire the lights, we will own them, and so we will have much more control over how swiftly repairs get done. And I would add that the fixtures that we're going to propose, that we would propose to use, are LED fixtures that are not reliant on that light bulb that can burn out or a ballast that can fail. These are far more reliable, and typically come with 5 or 10 year warranties for full replacement. So if they do fail, we'll have warranties to fall back on. But LED lights have been proven to be far more reliable in the short term, year to year, for their light sources. So. Right. Yes, weather doesn't affect them.
What are we currently paying for lighting?
We pay $70,000 a year total for our streetlights, and I don't know if you have that broken down.
Yeah, it's about $45,000 a year for the for just this part of our streetlights. So we're gonna essentially.
That's what we're paying Emera, is about 45,
Correct.
yeah, a year. And are they amiable to this change? I mean, are they glad to get rid of us? Or other municipalities, or are they?
Well, I think, well, ultimately, Judy, it doesn't really matter. We have legislation behind this, but I think probably, particularly in larger systems, to get this thorn out of their side is probably a good thing, which is probably why the legislation happened. But.
Over the weekend, I was able to confirm with a member of the Energy Committee that there is no intent to go back and revisit this. So the legislature thinks it's done its job.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, do you have-
Didn't
Oh, I just, love the lights that we've got now, this upgrade right here. And it'd be great to have that for people walking across the street, like you said. And I don't know, in the past, there's been some money from Efficiency Maine, so for some of these projects. So I don't know if that's gone now or.
No,
or
that includes, we'll be taking advantage, if we move forward, we'll be taking advantage of some discounts for the number of fixtures that we'll be getting, but also that estimate includes a number of the rebates and things like that that the consultant would actually handle for us.
And didn't I read somewhere in that overview of a 14 life expectancy of 14 years on these?
Yeah, that's about right.
Is that the lights or the fixtures and the lights, or?
That's the fixture. An LED fixture, it's a light emitting diode, so it's just this electronic board of little tiny diodes, and so when they do finally fail, you just replace the fixture.
Mm-hmm.
Are there different styles as well, right? Because I know there's certain areas you talked about, sort of more of a beautification kind of thing, and
Yeah, we'll be able
there'll be
to
options there.
tailor that to whatever our lighting expectation is. There's different, just like a 100-watt light bulb, a 60-watt light bulb. There's a number of those different options with LED fixtures as well, and we'll be able to pick the style of the fixture as well. It's going to be, I would assume, the most cost-effective way to do it would be use a classic Cobra head that's something you would see in a parking lot, things like that.
But just in case anyone at home's getting confused, that we're only talking about doing a study.
Absolutely.
We're getting carried away
Right.
talking about all the potential benefits of this, but right now we're just talking about a $5,700 study.
Right. And I just had one question is, could you explain the miscellaneous electrical account?
So in the capital budget, infrastructure budget, so Rob's portion of the capital budget, you have several projects that you will approve each year. So this year, for example, we're going to do North Main Avenue, and there was some money in there to do some of Main Mill Street, and so there are specific projects. Then down at the bottom of that plan, there are the miscellaneous accounts, and so you don't necessarily see miscellaneous when you approve them, but it's sidewalks, curbs, electrical.
Sidewalks, curbs, electrical, and just a standard roadway repairs.
And storm
And then I have a drainage account as well.
drainage. So those are funded each year to allow Rob to deal with the issues that come up that might not necessarily have made it big enough to make it on the plan, or our emergency repairs that have to be done. So that is the electrical piece.
Great.
I have one other question, which is, why sole sourced? I would think that this is something that there must be other companies doing this, so how come we ended up sole sourced?
So I spoke with the city of Brewer. They did bid theirs. They got 2 proposals, one from Tanco and one from another company whose name escapes me. But basically what it turned out to be is that their proposals were somewhat similar. The other one was a little more expensive, but he basically said, based on his experience with Tanco, that he wouldn't recommend that we go in any other direction. And given the fact that we're going to be able to, this is the first transition like this that's been done in this region. So Tanco's already been working with Emera on some very specific elements of the transition. So they've already ahead of the game. If we went to work with somebody else, it would probably cost us more. And we have the alternative at the end of the study. If we want to say, thank you, Tanco, we're going to put it out to bid from here, we could do that as well for the larger portion.
I understand. I mean, just the buyer in me. I have a hard time with sole sourcing, and only because I think it never hurts to get bids, because it puts people in a sense that there is competition. You know, when people feel that they're sole source, then they really aren't inclined to watch their numbers quite so much. So that's my only concern about that, because eventually if we follow through, this is a significant chunk of change. The $5,000 doesn't bother me particularly, but the $120 with a sole source, I would suggest that maybe when that time comes, even if you're not, you might be surprised at what you might get.
I think Rob did say that we would be bidding the second part.
Committing to this doesn't
prevent you from bidding.
Preclude us from, at the end of the study, taking a step back and deciding how you want to proceed from there.
Judy, I agree with that, but I also think there's incredible benefit. Just when we have something bid, we don't know what we're going to get for service. And if this company is coming in vetted, having worked already with Brewer and Emera, I think, as they say on the commercials, that's priceless. So.
I do think that the advantage that they have, and they'll retain that advantage in a bidding situation, would be the fact that they have a relationship with Emera. I do recognize it as being significant. I'm just saying, from my experience, you get a much better, I believe the quality of the work you get and the quality of your bids are better when it's a competitive mode than it is if it's sole source. Sole sourcing can lead to abuse.
Rob, okay, I'm sorry, Judy.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Rob, will this audit be done before the budget season? I mean, will we be talking about the light replacement during budget season?
No, it will be, if we decide to move forward with this, it's going to take a couple months to get the audit done. So it would be in July before we would really be ready to talk for sure hard numbers on the next step.
I anticipate putting in our ballpark into the capital budget, but I also anticipate looking at fund balance as a way to offset a one-time expense that would get repaid. Just because I look at it that way doesn't mean council will, but my thought is, even without the actual numbers, this is kind of a strike while the iron is hot, and I wouldn't want to push it out another year, because we're also going to begin looking at the design to address concerns on Mill Street with regard to sidewalks and pedestrians and stuff, and I think this would be a very important piece if we're going to do it.
So we will be discussing this again. Susan? Yeah.
As people discuss flipping the light switch on in the landscape, the metaphorical light switch on at the landscape, I would like people to take into consideration the celestial view, which is something that I myself enjoy and appreciate, after residing within urban, major metropolitan vicinities, and not being capable of appreciating the celestial view. I'd like people to consider the preservation of that as well, particularly upon reading reports that landscape, the celestial view, the landscape overhead it's becoming kind of like dwindling in visibility globally, you know, with the, you know, addition of lighting. You know, and as for safety concerns, you know, I mean, myself, I've walked in this landscape at all hours of the day. Any hour of the day I've walked it. I've walked from the here to the airport. You know, I've walked just my little 2 feet, the amount of miles I've put around here, you know, walking to Old Town, all hours of the day. You know, I'm more concerned of bears, like the bear animals eating, more so, you know, than the people. And that might be because I've lived at, you know, it's like same with, you know, Detroit. I'm cycling through Detroit at all hours of the day as well. So, you know, of all the landscapes, this has been the, you know, I'd have to say part of my reason for being here so long, you know, is the fact that it is one of the safest landscapes, you know, I've seen. So, you know, I understand the safety concerns, of course, that's a concern, but there's also, you know, the preservation of the ability to enjoy nature, you know, what there's some overhead that's enjoyable, and I'd hate for that to be, I would dislike very much for that to be lost.
Great.
Amongst such.
We appreciate that. We will definitely keep that in mind. All right. I will take a vote on Order 1834. All those in favor of authorizing the study? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And that was just a preview. We will be talking about it again. Moving on to Order 1835, order authorizing the town manager to accept a deed from Gary Noyes, acting as the personal representative of the estate of Ronald C. Noyes for a strip of land known as Noyes Walking Path and shown on the Town of Orono Assessor's Map 19-4, bounded by lots 21, 23, 28, and 29, as well as Forest Avenue and Sunrise Terrace. I'll take a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Mitch, how are you?
Good, and yourself? Good. So we were approached by a couple of different residents over concerns about this a walking path that is actually on our map as a walking path, and the concerns about where it was and some other things. So when we did some research, we recognized that we had no idea who owned it. So looking back and going through some old stuff, we recognized that actually when the subdivision was put in, the extension of the Noyes subdivision was put in down into Sunrise Terrace, the walking path was put on the planning board asked them to add the walking path to that plan. And it's in the plan and it says it in the plan, but the path itself was never deeded to anybody or never deeded to the subdivision. My understanding is that when we go through this process now and these things happen, typically something like that would be deeded to the town so that it's maintained as part of the subdivision. It didn't happen in the 50s, so we're back here with it still being owned by the Noyes estate, who originally owned the land when they made the subdivision. And so we reached out to Gary Noyes, who's a personal representative of that estate, and asked him if they would be interested in deeding that to the town if it was in fact theirs. We did some research through the town attorney that did come up with that it was still belonged to the Noyes estate. And with that, we have brought it to you to see if that is something that you guys are interested in. All the paperwork was drafted by the town attorney. There is a transfer tax of $4.40. That would be the cost. And if it was accepted, the Trails Committee is willing to take it over as a trail and make sure that it's maintained, as well as there's a number of residents that have already done that throughout the time. Along with that, once that deed, if it was accepted, it would be surveyed so that we knew exactly where it was and we could define it for all the people that live around that. We have used a surveyor that's volunteered for us in the past, so we don't foresee there being any cost to that either.
Great, and the abutters, there's no issue with the abutters on?
As of right now, most of the people that have talked to have been abutters in that land during that, and it's on the map already. It's there. It is not part of the abutter's property. There is a path that's already in the works.
Okay.
So, in the interest of full transparency, what originally brought this to our attention is an abutter that had moved the path. So I thinking that it was all their property, they could just move it down 10 feet, which is what kind of created the controversy. And if the town doesn't own it, the town can't say where it belongs, but the planning board has already said where it belongs. So this would give the town the ability to have it surveyed, put the pins in the ground, and then be protective of where that path is located to ensure that it stays there and is not running into another person's private property.
Great.
Yeah, and I think part of that was, and I think in your packet there's also an email from Walt Abbott discussing his property kind of skirt set on one side, and has really he's at the beginning of Sunrise Terrace, so he's the one that kind of came to these concerns because it's been there and he's kind of maintained it for a long time, and I think when you look at the deeds, it's really hard to tell where it is, and so I think it's really just trying to understand where it is and getting it to wherever it is and then maintaining that so that we don't have any problems in the future like this. So.
Great. Anyone have any questions or comments?
Just briefly, I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you to the Noyes family. I mean, for generations, they've given to this town in different ways, and this is just another example. I see little school children using that path every day, and it's an important feature in the town. And it's really nice that, they're still giving to the town.
I think Ron would love this too. Ronnie Noyes would be super happy about this.
I did look at the tax map, and it is definitely there, so so great. I will take a vote on Order 1835. All those willing to accept a deed? Passes unanimously. Order 1836. Thanks, Mitch. Order accepting the Maine Municipal Employees Health Trust Wellness Grant in the amount of $2,280 for the town's 2018 Employee Wellness Program. Take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Mitch.
So, excuse me. First of all, I'd like to say that you'll notice, I think that it may not be in your notes, but Nancy and I are co-chairs of the Wellness Committee, and I just realized what my job as the co-chair was, and that was standing up here having this conversation with you. Because frankly, Nancy does so much for this committee and all of her hard work, and I kind of sit back and say, what do you need me to do, Nancy? So I look at myself as more of an assistant chair. But now I also know I have speaking engagements as well.
And we want to make note that in the notes, in the minutes. Yeah.
That's right. So Sophie asked me to talk a little bit about the wellness program that is with the town, and like I said, Nancy and I are co-chairs of that, but it's primarily made up of staff members, not senior staff members, although there are a couple on that Rob Yerkes and I are on that committee. The reality is that it's an opportunity and a great program for the staff to have some say into what happens and how they feel about themselves and how they work within our town, and have some say about what programs and things happen. So basically what we do is do a survey that looks at working for the town and all the different things that we can provide with that survey, meaning sometimes we do some what we call lunch and learns, with an opportunity to learn something about wellness or learn something about, healthy foods or exercise or things like that. And sometimes they are just opportunities for people to get together. We've been doing departmental breakfasts that allow everybody to get together and go to different departments. So sometimes we go to the fire station and get tours of the fire station and see what other people do as a team building exercise. So there's kind of two parts to it. I think at the end of the day, this all ties into, on one side, teaching people healthy lifestyles so that it helps us from a town perspective on our health insurance and things like that. Not that it necessarily cuts down all illnesses and everything like that, but I think it helps people recognize better ways to deal with sickness or deal with being healthy. We have a lot of fun with a lot of different things that we do, and I think that I've noticed just the conversation around wellness has changed with this, and often I stop at the candy jar downstairs, and people smile at me, and then we start talking about diets, and we start talking about what's healthy and what's not healthy, and I take my hand out of the jar and I put the lid back on and I walk away. But I think at the end of the day, this is part of the Maine Municipal Employees Health Trust has an opportunity for grant funds to help with some of these things like lunch and learns and some other things, along with some funds from the town in different aspects. I think that I don't know that this is something that most people are aware that we do for our employees, and I think that's kind of why I'm here talking about it, not just because there's a grant available and that you guys need to accept that, but also that it's ingrained into our culture now about being well and thinking about things. We also participate in the Safety Day and how that affects us in our work. And we talk about whether we would have less sick days because we talk about health, and in reality, I think sometimes we talk about it and people actually now take sick days because they understand the effect of them being sick at work has on everybody else. So I think that this is a great opportunity for us to keep doing what we've been doing, and I think in the long run it does help us from a town perspective of probably slowing down the expenses of our health insurance, not cutting out those things, but maybe not making it rise as much, and maybe Sophie can touch a little bit on that end because I don't really deal with that as much as she does. So.
Well, I think you're doing a great job. I would just give the example that I gave at the Finance and Operations Committee, which is that the town of Orono is a self-rated health insurance, has a self-rated health insurance plan. And every year, we get to sit down with the executive director of the trust that funds that plan that we pay into and look at where all of our costs are going out. Because it's a self-funded trust, so it's just a bunch of towns that are together putting money in, there isn't this layer of profit. So it really, what you spend your money going out is an indicator of a lot of what your cost is going to be. We look at what they term lifestyle claims, and I don't want to get wrapped up in the term, but what they mean by that are things that are often affected by the way people maintain their health, whether it be their weight, their diet, going to the doctor, taking the appropriate medication, that kind of thing. So things that maybe they can't stop. Maybe genetics tells them that they're going to have a disease, but how do they manage it, kind of. And last year when we met with MMEHT, we were I was surprised because what we saw since the implementation of a more robust wellness program, we have seen our costs associated with diabetes go down 40%. Same number of people being treated for it, but instead of, diabetes is one of those diseases that when it's out of control, it's a lot more expensive to treat than when it's not. And so to see that kind of a decrease over 3 or 4 years is pretty significant. That's what we're kind of aiming for. Plus, the other piece I would just say is everything's a balance, right? We want to be fair to taxpayers. We want to provide good service. We want to be focused on being productive in the workplace. But you need to balance that with your staff, and you've got to have good morale. You've got to have people who are safe and working productively in the workforce. And the research would really indicate that working to build that morale and the sense of team and feeling like the town cares, which is the feedback I get about wellness is for our employees, this is the town saying that we care. And I think that for a few $1,000s, this is a pretty cheap program for what we get in return.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
I don't know if the funding is appropriate for this type of thing, but after my extended stint at LL Bean, sitting on my butt for 8 hours at a time, stand-up stations, what a remarkable difference. I don't know how expensive they are. Well, the ones that are adjustable, but you can get some, I think, that are maybe a bit more affordable, but it really makes a huge difference. Weight, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, we've been actually working that through, and if you look downstairs, you'll notice when you come in to register your car, people can, sometimes they're standing up and sometimes they're sitting down. Those stations are not the full built-out fancy schmancy. They cost us about $390 a piece, and we have been doing that on a request basis. Our police chief tried it, but then decided he liked to sit, so now I think our IT person has his. But he doesn't like to sit. That's just his excuse so he can go out and be on patrol.
One of the things I found, for whatever reason, for me personally, I had a hard time typing standing up. I don't know why. Maybe that was your problem, Josh? Yeah.
I just think that it just didn't feel right to me. If I stand up, I go away.
It just makes a huge difference, these types of programs, they really do. I mean, it's very subtle sometimes, but over time,
I would also add that Nancy and I also kind of participate in the regional wellness groups, and from time to time, we'll have a meeting. And the last meeting that we were at, I think we were talking about some stuff, and I think the question came up, we were doing something, and we said, well, what does everybody else do? And they all kind of just stared at us. And what we realized is that we do a lot more than anyone else. Which is amazing. I mean, because we talk about, gee, is there something else we can do? Is there something else we can do? And a lot of people are saying if the town just did one lunch and learn, meaning they had one program for an hour, they would be excited about it and getting people there. And we're trying to do that once a quarter at least. Good. So
that's great. Thank you to both chairs of that committee. I will take a vote on Order 1836 to accept the grant. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. All right, now we're moving on to Council Committee representative reports. I believe Sam is Community Development.
Yes, indeed. Short report here. Our meeting back on the 22nd of February had a few items. First was an ordinance organizing, or sort of, is it organizing or reorganizing? Officially creating an organization for police services. This is based on, we need this for accreditation. We need to have very clearly defined roles of our police department. So we looked at that. It is included in the packet here, the ordinance, and it also clearly defines the position of the chief and his duties, or the chief's duties, just to really clarify everything. Does a great job of that. We moved the fee for police service ordinance revision, sort of put that in with the unruly gathering ordinance, combining that with a little bit of a structure and a fresh structure on that fee for different things, and we bumped that, didn't we?
Yes, we are looking at including that in the unruly gathering revision that you will see on March 22nd at 6 p.m. right here in council chambers.
And then the last thing was just one more roundabout with the drive-through facility land use ordinance, sort of clarifying that whole process a little bit more.
That comes to council workshop on March 26th at 6 p.m.
So stay tuned.
Really, the commercials are really interesting. Megan, I believe you have a comp plan.
Yes. Well, first, briefly, also the Orono Historical Society, in addition to what's going on in the display case out there, the Society's been working on a cemetery tour with town staff, providing some information and getting that all together. It was requested, some folks requested that we have a town cemetery tour, and the Historical Society has taken that up, and they're moving forward with that. And also they are working on a reprint of a really interesting old book called Old Orono Oddments, which I can't wait till they get more copies printed so I can buy one. But Douglas Glanville worked on it and wrote it years back, and they're doing a reprint of that. So that'll also be a fundraising effort for the Historical Society. For the Comp Plan Implementation Committee meeting, we had a lively discussion about property maintenance standards, and I don't think I need to say more. I think I already said my piece. We all love this town. We have different ideas about what it means to love this town and what kind of community we're trying to envision, and we did try to sort of see different sides of everything in that, and we will be moving those items forward to keep looking at them. We already heard about the Park Street Development Moratorium extension. That was something that Jana presented on at our meeting. And then finally, we discussed items for the next items that the committee will focus on. So we're currently working on vernal pools, Park Street, and property maintenance. We're going to take advantage of some work that our previous town planner had already kind of been underway with. So we have a lot of research on different things that connect to the comp plan, and we're going to make use of that research and kind of look at some different things, including let's see, rental properties in terms of whether local qualified managers are needed and what that means, affordable housing, single-family homes, conditional use of mineral extraction, and microloan programs. So these are all things that we have existing research that staff has done for us, and we're going to try to bring some of these things forward.
Does anyone else have any committee or organizational notes? I'll give the finance, but I just want to make sure I don't miss anything. Yeah, there was two things that so finance met on Wednesday, March 7th, and I'm going to channel Tom Perry, and pretty much everything we discussed, you've seen. The only thing I'd like to note is we also accepted a grant from Mechanics Lodge number 66 for children's programming. We've been doing a reading program at the library for the Mechanics Lodge, and in appreciation for that, they gave a donation, which will be used for future programming. Lori had lots of ideas. And the other thing was there was an emergency water line repair at the public library, which has been fixed, and no more leaking in the basement. And the financial reports look good. The tax payments are 98%? 95. Well, that's all right. The town is doing well in paying their taxes, so we appreciate that. And that's the finance report. Stay tuned. Sophie will tell you the date of the next finance meeting.
That one is April 4th. It's early because it's the Wednesday before the council meeting, which is April 9th.
There you go. All right, moving on to future agenda items and items of concern. Megan, do you have any? No? Judy, anything? It's your big chance, Judy. Tom,
I'll pass also.
Sam?
Yeah, one thing, we just received notice from RSC 26 Superintendent Meredith Higgins. I'm reading directly from this. Due to the expected arrival of significant snowstorm tomorrow, the 13th, the schools will have early dismissal for all students. Orono Middle School and Orono High School will be dismissed at 12 noon, Asa Adams at 12:45, and there will be no afternoon pre-K. So, there you go.
We really are an all-service council here.
We are amazing, yes.
All right. Public petitions, I don't think we have any. Public comments, do we have any? Susan?
I'd like to congratulate Ms. Sullivan for her retirement from council. Her presence and voice will be missed. Pertaining to the attention, I think Ms. Sullivan addressed a number of topics and situations that otherwise I think would have been overlooked or dismissed easily. And, having her on council, observing her, addressing those things did kind of, there was like a sigh of relief when she spoke up many times. So I'll miss that. But congratulations at the same time. Enjoy the television. And I think, one thing that just came to mind, just a topic of, I'm still shaken up by the recent loss of the young person. Because considering 3 weeks before, I confronted another young person about underage substance use. And I just find a lot of apprehension as legalizations occur. One thing I'm kind of seeing, I hear people talking a lot about wellness and health. There's a lot of talk and then there's practice of such things. And I think within the moderate, there's also the vicinity, both Bangor and Orono, there's like an eruption of beer gardens and legalizations, and honestly, I think those are all kind of, there's health and wellness, but I think there's just kind of like a lot of turmoil and conflict within that topic.
Watch the balance.
Yeah, and even today, I was out shopping and there were some young girls in close proximity. And I think they're kind of tentatively, indirectly kind of insinuating like young drinking ages and legalizations of changing those legalizations. I think there's just a lot of, I think it's kind of a mess, to be quite honest, to put it very simply. And, a lot of times I get called mom or crazy, or I tend to be kind of stern about such things. It's not that people shouldn't have their fun, but there's the balance is way off. Mm-hmm. And I think the young people, I think there's a lot of misguidance occurring, especially if young people are getting provided with substances that are supposed to be kept under control. And I think a lot of times the adults themselves are out of control. If the adults aren't keeping themselves in control, how are the kids going to? If the adults don't set the, if they don't represent that, if they don't demonstrate that to the youth aren't going to ever learn it. The metaphorical dead horse, but I'm still inclined to voice it. It's just kind of like, I don't mingle with people all that often. It's other people's children, other people's responsibilities, but at the same time, it's just what I observe and notice when people talk and when I do attempt to mingle with people. It's an old conflict that's very exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
Susan, if I can set your mind at ease with a very quick story. It's just this afternoon, a couple of folks that I know in town were telling me this very entertaining story. Well, it wasn't, it was entertaining to me, but they got out of work, working late at a local establishment. They were driving home through the North Main neighborhood. They saw a young gentleman, appeared to be college age, not wearing many clothes. It was very cold out. He was clearly drunk. He was trying to go into different houses, all of these things. They followed him through the neighborhood, even though he was threatening to fight them. They made sure he was safe. They called the police. He was taken care of, and they were telling me that they were thinking the whole time about the young woman who passed away recently and the gentleman who passed away last year. And if there's any silver lining, it's that we live in a community where people really care and look out for each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
Even though this young gentleman was quite hostile to the people trying to help him,
Yeah.
they, at 2:30 in the morning, followed him and made sure he was safe. And so we can take some solace in living in a community where people look out for each other.
I mean, I'll say that, but at the same time, I'll also say on the upside, you know, I saw on like a YouTube, I think I first read Bangor Daily News had a report about the Bangor High School cheerleading team. And so I looked on YouTube, the Bangor High School cheerleaders, and oh my gosh, their gymnastics are incredible. So it's not to say that there aren't, you know, kind of clusters of health, you know, the practice of health orientation. But, you know, at the same time, there's, you know,
Great,
those
thank you.
concerns. I'd also like to wish everyone a happy St. Patrick's Day. Go easy on the green beers. Get the Shamrock Shakes.
Thank you. I'd have a public comment from the employees.
Just wanted a quick announcement about the shoe drive that the elementary school student council is doing. They are trying to raise funds for an Orono family to get a wheelchair accessible van. And they have a goal of 100 bags of 25 shoes. By collecting the shoes, they get 40 cents a pound for the shoes that they get. And our fearless leader has charged us with a little competition within the town to collect shoes by departments. And my understanding is that town council has also got on board with that would match possibly. Is that correct?
So at the Finance and Operations Committee, I asked what folks thought about matching our 40-cent contribution, so per pound contribution up to $250, just because I can think big. With the idea of taking it out of our public health funds, and the members of the committee thought that was great. It was within my discretionary authority, so that is what we're doing. We also put a friendly challenge out to the University Credit Union, which President Matt Walsh has accepted, and so we have not only internal competition, but some external competition.
And Mitch, if somebody wants to take part in that, is that on the school website or the?
It is. I mean, certainly they could contact me at Parks and Rec as well, and we can get them pointed in the right direction.
Don't they have shoe drop off at the library?
They may very well. I know that I have expressed to Deb that I would help collect shoes and find a place for them to store them. So I'm kind of, I pick them up from her when she gets bags full, but I'm sure if somebody dropped their shoes off anywhere, we could get them into a bag and get them in the right place. So,
Is there a deadline?
This goes through April. Knowing how my staff is, where they like to use every possible minute of a day and day of a month, I have said that our competition is going to last through March. Figuring if you can find your shoes, you can find your shoes. And they can be new or gently used, anything except for skates. So the heavier the better, but no skates.
Steel-toed, everything.
Great, thanks, Mitch. All right. The last item on the agenda is adjournment. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Sorry, Stuart. It's okay. You got a folder. You've been waiting for us.
I got a few items. Stuart Dexter on Fernwood Street. First item, 10 after 9, I guess we're getting out at 9:30 tonight. The first item I have is I'm concerned about the young lady that froze to death on Coburn. I've seen one small report in the Bangor Daily, and I'm just wondering if the town is doing any investigation on this, or what's happening. Maybe it's been announced, everything's on the computer now. I don't have a computer. Just kidding, I do, everybody does.
Right behind you, Stuart, the chief is here, and he would love to give you an update.
Let's just step outside, too. So there is an investigation. The investigation, as far as the police department is concerned, is concluded. The report is still being generated to send down to the district attorney's office to see if they want to pursue charges or if they would like us to do more of an investigation. Other things they want us to do, but that should be completed this week. It'll go down to the DA's office and they will decide when and if there will be charges related to her death. Can you be more specific about what you'd like to know?
Sure. I'm going to trip because I just noticed my shoestrings untied. I guess what I'm thinking, this young lady was 19 years old. From what I've read, she was intoxicated. The other thing I read, there was a combination of heroin. Now, she had to get that somewhere, and someone would know where she got it. Someone should be held responsible, I would think. Now, not necessarily through Orono, but through the county. Drugs, alcohol, underage. There's got to be someone put the blame on that. I remember a few years ago, I think he was a drunk driver who ran into the girl on Middle Street or over there. I think he's in jail now, I'm not sure. But it seems like this girl died. And someone must have known she was drinking, and someone had to furnish it to her, unless she stole it. So I definitely, it bothers me. It keeps me awake at night knowing that young lady died in Orono, freezing to death. So hopefully there's going to be some department, whether it's alcohol people or state police or local police or whatever.
So much of what you're asking, I can't tell you.
What's that?
Much of what you're asking for, I can't tell you. But you're absolutely right. She was underage. She was drinking, which means someone was providing her both the alcohol and a place to drink, both of which are crimes. It was cocaine, not heroin. 6 of one, half dozen of the other. That she was using the night before, we believe. So yes, she had to have purchased that or acquired it somehow. We will hold, if possible through the DA's office, we will hold anybody that we can responsible in any way that contributed to her death. That's all I can tell you. We're just as upset about it as you are. I publicly said it to the news that this is what we worry about all the time, is that these kids are, engaging in high-risk behaviors that can result in this type of tragedy. So you can lead a horse to water sometimes about trying to teach safe behaviors, and that's our goal every day, is to provide a safe environment. So,
Josh, let me ask this just in maybe a different way. Not only, I understand that the police department would very much like to hold people accountable, but have we investigated? Have we been putting our effort into finding that? I think is part of the question.
Yes, there are many details that we can't release that have come about that we've learned through the investigation. We will just have to wait and see what the DA's office is comfortable with as far as pursuing charges.
Thank you. My main concern was I thought probably you couldn't give out any details at this point. And my concern was just hoping that there was something being done. And apparently we just heard a story tonight of, I don't know how old this gentleman was who was drunk and trying to go home. It did show there was neighbors that were concerned. Now, hopefully he was over 21, but we don't know. I do have to say, and I told the council this a couple years ago, that I was walking down Mainwood Street, and I don't walk very steady, and someone called the police that there was an elderly, intoxicated man walking down Mainwood. And the police came around and stopped and got out of his car, came over and questioned me. And told me that there was a report. I took offense to two things, elderly and intoxicated. I'm a teetotaler, and I did find out when I tell people I'm a teetotaler, they think it's a new political party, I guess. So I appreciate it, Chief. I got some other items if I could. I said, bang the gavel if I go over. Okay. And it was mentioned a little bit tonight. I was wondering how many of the property owners are delinquent from the February 28th or whatever that date is. And just an idea, I'm just concerned about people paying their property taxes.
Stuart, I wish more people were like you. That's
Yeah,
very
I
good.
bet.
So, to put this in perspective, accounts are not considered delinquent. Right now, they're late but not delinquent. In May, when we send out the first letter that starts the tax lien process, they then become a delinquent account. But for 2018 taxes, to put that in perspective, we're 95% collected. We put out about 1,300 tax bills, and we have 361 accounts that have not been fully paid. Many of those have paid the first half of the year, but haven't paid the second half of the year yet. And for a total of $613,211.88. When I compare that to this time last year, that is not an increase over last year. We're in the same ballpark. So I went back one more year because we always have 2 live years this time of the year. So 2017 taxes, which would be scheduled, they're liened right now. They have tax liens on them. And they would be scheduled to foreclose in December of 2018. We have $151,666.56 outstanding. That's 34 accounts. I know you're going to ask, so I'm going to beat you to it. 3 of those accounts belong to Penobscot Valley LLC, which is the owner of the golf course, which is 50.3% of the total. So they're right around $70,000. I also know, because you gave me a call earlier, so I would have an answer, when you look at the 2017 and 2018 taxes, which are the 2 years that the golf course owes, they owe a total of $145,820.81 in real estate tax and $1,950 in personal property tax. Helpful?
Yep.
Okay.
One thing that concerned me, that probably gets me a little riled up about the property tax, was the fellow that bought the country club came into town and said, it's our business practice not to pay the real estate taxes for 2 years. I can't believe a businessman would do that. Apparently, it's the way businesses work. I don't know. But to come in here and tell the town, well, we aren't paying our real estate taxes for 2 years, so they're always 2 years behind, but I think they got 2.5 years or 3 years behind.
Well, now it's a new owner as well.
It is a new owner.
Yeah.
And this new owner has definitely not taken that tone. I think that, like every business, especially when you just are starting out, which they are now, just the new owner is just starting out, I'm not sure that they expected this much debt. But the 2016 property tax, we thought we may have foreclosed on it, worked with the owner, and they paid that off in full. So we are now I'm hoping to work with them to have them start making payments on what is old.
I would probably recommend that community development or whatever they are, when someone wants to start a business in Orono, I'd ask them, do you plan to pay your property taxes on time, or are you one of those that wait 2 years and go every? And if that's a coming way, I'd recommend every property owner in the town of Orono not pay their taxes, pay it every 2 years or 2-year lag. That would make the town very happy, I know. Let's see what else I got here. I got a little statement to say that I am the unofficial self-appointed chairman for the property tax rates of 50 towns and cities in the state of Maine. Remember, that's unofficial, self-appointed. And I have good news and I have bad news. After a number of years, that the highest rate of the 50 cities and towns was Orono. Now, this last year, whether it's good or bad, Lewiston knocked Orono off first place, and Lewiston went into first place. Now, whether you want to be first in having the highest tax rates or not, I don't know. And I did find out just this evening before dinner that Rumford came under my radar. And actually, Rumford was the highest property tax of 50 towns in Orono, in Maine. And that Lewiston was second highest. So Orono dropped down to third. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. You know, we like to be in first place on everything. So anyway, I did find that out, and I do welcome the past council for dropping down, at least not from first place anymore. And hopefully the new council starting next month, I guess, hopefully they'll maybe drop down to 5th or 6th place. And that's all I got for, I've got some literature for you people to take home or put through the shredder, probably go through the shredder, and maybe the council members, when they're going into their budget hearings, will maybe keep this in front of them and seeing what some of these other communities are. One of the lists has the 20 towns, and the other list has what I call it was the top 19 of 41, I guess. And it just tells you what our neighbors are doing and then people farther off. And I'll let you have this, and I'm sorry to take up so much time, and hopefully that our taxes will go down a little bit.
We appreciate the challenge that you've given us, Stuart. With that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you, Judy.
Do you need us to sing a song?